Peace, peace, and welcome. We're glad you're here. This is the Cook on Monday Morning podcast. I am here with the undefeated.
What's next?
One of the leading philanthropists, civic leaders of our generation, Daniel. Lurie.
I couldn't pronounce it as a kid growing up, so it's okay. It's okay.
Mr. Lurie, with my apologies.
No problem.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
At Cook on Monday Morning, we believe that if you own Monday morning, you can own the week. If you own the week, you can own the year. And if you change your year, you can change your life. So, like myself, Daniel is a native of San Francisco. You probably heard of an organization that he built called Tipping Point, which has, done an incredible work to support anti-poverty initiatives in San Francisco. They're now in the middle of addressing housing, and I want to get into housing or unhoused residents. And you just moved on?
I'm no longer CEO. I'm chair of the board at this point.
Got it. Yeah, man. So it's
this
a lot
is retirement right here, right now, and I'm spending my Monday morning with you.
Okay,
which is good.
Yeah,
which is good.
I'm retired too.
Not for long, I heard.
No. So for the people that just may not know, what is Tipping Point?
Okay. Well, we started Tipping Point 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. We meant to address the inequity in our community. There are far too many people living in poverty in the Bay Area, in an area as wealthy and rich with resources as the Bay Area. We know that there are something on the order of 1.7 million people who are too poor to meet their basic needs. And there are a lot of people that want to be part of the solution. And so we built Tipping Point to be part of that solution. We started in 2005. One of my childhood heroes, Ronnie Lott of the 49ers, myself, Katie Page, and Chris James started Tipping Point. Mm-hmm. And we made our first grants to a couple organizations right here in the city, including the Homeless Prenatal Program in September of 2005. And we fund organizations that are focused on education, housing, employment, and early childhood care. So we have groups that are, a third of our groups are here in San Francisco, but then we have about a third in the East Bay and a third in the South Bay with a couple in Marin. We have about 40 organizations that we fund and support, and we try to connect those groups with the best resources throughout the region. I could go on, but we're essentially more like a foundation than we are ourselves a direct service organization. So we go out and try to fundraise as much as possible from individuals and from the business community. And then we partner with local government, whether it be, the city and county of San Francisco or Oakland or San Jose. We try to just put our arms around our organizations and help them be as efficient and effective at serving their clients as possible. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The first time I heard about Tipping Point was through my former high school history teacher, Alec Perkins. And, before I ran a nonprofit, I knew that in San Francisco, there's like a ton of nonprofits. Yeah. I mean, the Bay Area has a lot of nonprofits. And I heard about it because John Legend was performing at a fundraiser. And I was like, oh, Tipping Point, it's John Legend. And so, and that night,
did you come to that show?
I did come to the show. Right, yeah. It was on Market Street.
Yeah. At the Warfield.
Yeah. And the organization raised like $3 million in a night or something like that. Is that low?
Yeah, I think that was low.
Okay.
But it was good. That's all right. Look, he put on a good show that night. He put on a good show.
What y'all raise that night? You remember?
I don't remember that night, but Alec, who was a history teacher, right?
My history teacher,
where you went to high school.
Thurgood Marshall, the best high school. Where'd you go to high school?
apparently not the best high school
not the
in San
best high school,
Francisco.
no.
I went to University High.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't venture out much. I went to town school in the city. I went to university, and I literally live a block from where I grew up at this point, or 4 blocks from where I grew up. I did move out. I moved to New York for a while. I went to school in North Carolina. I got out, and then I knew I had to come home because it's the best place. But yes, Alec is one of our great board members. He's been on the board, I think, 11, 12 years now. We have about 20, 25 board members that cover all of our overhead, so that when we raise money from the community, every single dollar goes out. So when you hear about foundations, typically you hear about big endowments, and they just give away 5% of what they have in the bank or in their investments. Last year, we raised about $25 million for core operating support for those groups that I mentioned. All $25 million goes out. So right now, actually, we've raised a couple $1 million this year. We want to try to get back to 25 so we can continue to support our groups and even add groups to our portfolio. So that's a big difference with our model, is that we believe that people are struggling now. We use this term that, you could have a rainy day fund and you're saving up, but for a lot of people, and you know this well, a lot of people are struggling right now. And so we've always believed in bringing in the money and getting it right out. And so that's also kind of a different thing. We do have an annual event. We got one coming up in May 7th. We haven't announced the talent yet. Okay. I'll let you know. I'm hoping it's good. But last year we raised about $16-17 million in one night. So yeah, we have a crazy event, and we have an extraordinarily generous community that wants to be engaged and involved, and it's our job to bring people together. This, and we didn't talk about what we were going to talk about today, but I am so frustrated with the political discourse in this city and in this country, because all we seem to be doing right now is attacking people. Billionaires are bad. Homeless people are bad. But there's so many good things happening, and there's so many people that want to be engaged in the solution. I mean, we can't even... I think we're both Democrats. I mean, we Democrats are like at each other's throats right now. Like, it's not a productive use of our energy. I think I just took us on a whole new tangent. Sorry.
No. I mean, no. This show is about whatever your story and whatever you want to get into, and I would love to get into that. One of the things I wanted to highlight just for me about the success that Tipping Point has had around fundraising, and it's all kind of relative, right? Like, I don't know if the 25 million you raise is like a rounding error for your friends, or if it took like a lot of work to do. But in this community, especially for me trying to run Mission Bit, like trying to raise money, to raise for any nonprofit to see another one pull in like several $1 million in a night in a place that's like filled with nonprofits, that's like, whoa, that's crazy, And so that's what blew me away initially. Like, wow, they're really raking in a lot of resources through like their network and their effort. Do you have any response to that?
So I listen. I mean, there's definitely some groups in our portfolio that are like, hey, does this mean that we're not going to be able to raise as much? And my belief and our hope has always been that let us be good at the fundraising, and then we're going to go write some really big checks to you. So on average, our grant size to our 40 groups is about $350,000 per year in general operating support. So that's another difference, is that we don't call a Martha Ryan at Homeless Prenatal or Erica Kish at Compass or a Sherilyn Adams at Larkin Street and say, okay, we're going to give you $300,000, but you have to spend it in this particular way, and it's very directed. We say, listen, we're going to do our due diligence. We're going to invest in the leadership and in the mission. We're going to support you with tools to analyze your data. Are you serving your clients well? And that's on top of the $300,000 general operating support grant. We write some groups $1 million check if they're at scale and if they're delivering results. So we've always believed that because we have a great network, we can go out and raise bigger funds, and in turn, we can write bigger checks to our groups. There's definitely sometimes been some tension in the community that's been like, well, why are you giving Tipping Point all this money? And I would just in turn say, listen, it's coming in and it's going out, and we believe we're increasing the pie. We're not taking money from the smaller nonprofits. And I would say, I do understand, like, we scrape and claw every year for that whatever number we raise. Just like if someone's raising $500,000 a year for their nonprofit or $150,000, I'd say it's as hard to raise smaller dollars as it is the bigger dollars. So, and that's another reason why we like our model. It keeps us hungry. It keeps us understanding that what our groups have to go through to fundraise each and every year. It's hard. And we don't think our groups should spend that much time fundraising. We think they should be serving their clients and doing their work better. And so we're trying to help them by giving the bigger checks.
Yeah, no, yeah. I didn't look at it as like when I saw it happening, I was like, okay, somebody's doing it. It's possible. How do I put Mission Bid in a position to do that? Because when you look at all the things that you want to associate with building a brand that people believe in, it's like you have like these celebrity acts performing, you have like all these people that are in positions of power attending, and then you're putting up multiple millions of dollars of funds in a night. So and because I know Alec, right? I did get some insight along the way about how it works, and even with how, at least initially, how you all secure performance acts, because you had like during my first school board race, Alec came to one of my house parties, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm on my way to see Prince right after this."
Yeah, I thought I was waiting for you to bring up Prince. I mean, Prince. That was through one of our board members, Phaedra Ellis Lampkins, who is just the best, and she actually was one of the youngest organizers ever in the state of California, down in the South Bay, I believe. And she joined our board a number of years ago. I met her through Van Jones, and she took over Green for All when Van, I believe, went to the White House to work for President Obama. And then she got somehow connected with Prince, and she was helping to manage Prince. Prince asked her to come help him, and she and I talked a couple of times and about Prince performing and doing a benefit. And we had one conversation, and we almost pulled the trigger on a concert, and then we had kept the conversation going. And she called me on a Monday morning, and she's like, "What do you think about doing a concert?" I was like, "Let's do it." She's like, "How about Wednesday?" I was like, "Okay." We turned around. I think it was a 48-hour, 72-hour thing. And we did it at the Fillmore. We did 2 shows. I think one was supposed to start at 8 and the second one maybe 10 or 10:30. There's a line around the block, around the Fillmore, and it's 6:30 p.m. And we get a phone call, and Prince is still in Los Angeles, and it's 6:30.
Wow.
He got there. The first show I think started at 9. Second show I think started 11:30, 12.
Okay.
And he played till 3 or 3:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Definitely one of the top moments in terms of just being able to see, I think the best performer of, our lives perform and do it for fundraising for our community, which was great. And that was an amazing night. But we've had some amazing talent. Last year we had Eddie Vedder play at a smaller dinner that we did last year, and the list has gone on.
Beck played.
Beck.
Yeah, I didn't know who they were, but
he's pretty good. He's pretty talented.
I know.
That's okay.
It's not my genre.
No.
But they won a lot of awards. Or that guy. He's not a group, it's a person.
It's a guy.
Right. He has a band.
I wasn't going to call you out on it. He called you out on it.
I know who Prince and John Legend are, but Beck, I'm not, But
you're wearing a Chromeo t-shirt. I think
he's talking about David off camera.
Yeah. I think they may have played for... anyway, we've had some... believe me, we've had some acts play that I didn't know before we signed them. So we have a great relationship with Another Planet. Greg Perloff, the founder of that venue, puts out on Outside Lands and a few other events. And they run Bill Graham. They run the Greek Theater in Berkeley. They run the Independent right on the Visadero. So we've done a lot of shows. We've done Nathaniel Rateliff, the Night Sweats at the Independent. And so Greg and Danielle Madera and Alan have always helped us with that. And then Live Nation helped us on that Prince show. But Greg has been great, and that's how we usually get our talent.
Yeah. And so I think it's great because obviously you have a lot of people that can write big checks, and you've met some of these people that are entertainment, but you really are like accessible. We've met several times, and I know you've been out. You're out in the community, and you have a family. You're doing a bunch of stuff. I want to get into. So I think it's like this bridge building thing that I've always tried to also do in my career. Like, how do we bring these groups together for the benefit of the marginalized? Right. I want to get into. There's stuff about your story that I want to get into also, but I want to talk about this project. This housing project on
our homelessness initiative. Yeah. We call it the Chronic Homelessness Initiative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Do you want me to?
Please explain.
Okay. So listen, all of the groups that we've been funding for, the last 15 years have been direct service groups working on those 4 issue areas: education, housing, employment, early childhood. And they're all meant to support people in providing opportunity to either get back on their feet or prevent them from falling into poverty. Job training programs that, will get someone a $32 an hour living wage job, or early childhood program that will get kids to school kinder ready. And that's our bread and butter. That is what we think we do really well, and it's super important. And then what we haven't typically done is focus on folks that will never actually be self-sufficient. And a lot of the folks that we're seeing on the street are not going to be self-sufficient. They have mental health issues that need to be treated and stabilized. There's a lot of people that are so far gone, having really damaged themselves with drug use and opioid use and meth use and stuff. But it doesn't mean we should give up on them, right? But we had never funded groups that would kind of help those folks on the street that we see. And so 3 years ago, had a friend who said, listen, we need to do something about this homelessness situation. And at that time, we had heard about philanthropists getting behind family homelessness and the number of kids, the Benioffs and Salesforce getting behind, and they worked with Hamilton families and Tamika Moss on trying to house these public school kids that were homeless, right? I mean, you know this better than I do. We also knew that the federal government was doing actually a really good job addressing veterans' homelessness. And then we have some groups, like Martha Ryan and Erica Kish and Larkin Street, working with foster youth and family homelessness. But no one was focused on chronic homelessness. And so we said, okay, that's going to be our lane. We studied the issue for 6 months, and we put together a game plan to try to hit at that time, 2,100 people that were chronically homeless on the street, which means out on the street for more than a year and have a disabling condition, usually mental health, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, usually co-occurring. Really tough population to handle, but no one was focused on it. So we put together a plan, and then we went out and we had only a couple of dinners and a couple of meetings. And we asked a small subset of our community to focus on that for a 5-year period. And we raised $100 million. Our goal is to cut chronic homelessness in half in San Francisco. This is just San Francisco. That $100 million is just focused here. We are not handing those dollars to the city. We're investing them ourselves in partnership with the city on some things. And so that's a special initiative that is part of Tipping Point, but outside of that 25 million, that core that I was talking about. And so we're about 2.5 years in. 3 buckets to the strategy. 1, prevent. The first one is build more housing. And that doesn't mean ground up construction necessarily. It can mean mining existing stock. There are empty apartment units in San Francisco right now. We're working with a great group called Brilliant Corners.
Alex Turk came on and explained it too.
Okay, great. Yeah. So Alex is a partner of ours on this, and he's helping us with the messaging and this all-in campaign that we're doing, which means that we can do this. We need everybody to be supportive. We need everybody to say yes to housing in their neighborhood. We need landlords to say yes to bringing formerly homeless people into their apartment buildings. Because I got a little secret for you. Okay. If someone is housed, they're no longer homeless.
That's true.
And everybody is so worried about the homeless, and they're so worried about, but we have formerly homeless living all over the city, and they're not homeless anymore. Right. They're stable, and they're and many can become productive citizens again. But we just need to get them housed. So there's a bucket that is trying to build more housing or create more housing. It's create more housing. Second bucket is prevent people from falling into homelessness, and that's around mental health support. That's working very closely with the Department of Public Health here in San Francisco, working with Jeff Kaczynski's department, and working with the mayor closely on that. And the third is how do we help the city and county be more efficient and effective with their dollars? So we've helped fund a data system called the One System that can actually really understand where all of our homeless neighbors are interacting with the system. We're doing a jail pilot program with the sheriff's department. So we're doing a lot of different things. The big thing is that we're building that you'll hear more about in the coming years, that we bought a piece of property in the Soma district. And we are trying to build we are building a 146 unit building. It will be done in under 3 years and under $400,000 a unit, which still sounds crazy, but right now it takes 6 to 7 years to get something built and $700,000 a unit. So we're trying to bend the cost curve down, and we're trying to prove to everybody that we can build housing here in San Francisco at that price and in that time frame. And if we can do that, we're off to the races throughout the region, because if we can do that in San Francisco, we can do that throughout.
Go ahead.
And by no means, some people are going to be like, well, you shouldn't just build in San Francisco. It's not about building our way out of the problem. It's about proving and testing and prototyping a concept that can work not only in San Francisco, but everywhere. We need to build housing throughout the state of California. You heard that from the governor in his State of the State speech, focused solely on housing and homelessness. But we got to own some of the responsibility here in San Francisco.
Yeah, and so the proactive approach and trying to pull together your philanthropic community to also get involved, I think is also a response to what it's felt like as a resident, the city not doing enough, the problem getting worse, the presence being overwhelming, and people being really frustrated by. I mean, you talked about it. You talked about a lot of good things are happening, and billionaires are bad. Like you said, homeless is bad, and so in a lot of ways, your intervention is necessary because of a lack of progress from the city. And I know you wouldn't say that because you're working with everybody, and I think they're all bringing you on as a willing partner. But it was important for me to say that, and I appreciate the leadership that you have initiated with whoever else is involved to get that going. I want to dig in a little bit more to this project, the housing project.
Okay.
How are you going to bend the cost curve?
So we used SB 35, which allowed for, I think we got an extra level. If you build 100% supportable housing or affordable housing, in this case, it's extremely low income housing, ELI housing. We got through all these CEQA reviews much quicker. So actually bought the piece of property, and within 7 months it had passed planning and the board of supervisors with unanimous support at both department and at the supervisory level, which just doesn't happen. We're acting as a private kind of, our philanthropic dollars are actually acting as, like private funds so we didn't have to go out and get loans and go through that process, which can take a couple years in it of itself. Before SB 35, it probably would have taken us 18 to 24 months to get approval. We got it in 6. We are looking at different ways to get it built. We're looking at modular. We're looking at, stick-built construction as well. And we'll see. We haven't determined what we're using at this point, but we hope to start construction later this year, and we hope to have it open by the end of next summer. And that would be 2 years, 9 months since the time we actually purchased the land. And the $400,000 number includes land price. And so what we're going to do is use philanthropic capital, and then we will lease the units back to the city. So the city, through its coordinated entry program, will place the people into the housing. And this is for single adults. They have own kitchen, own bathroom. They're small units. They're 200 square foot units, 210 maybe. But we're trying to make a beautifully built building. It's going to fit in well with the neighborhood. It's right now a surface parking lot that barely gets used. And yet, by the way, we had tremendous opposition from the neighborhood groups. We also had tremendous support, but I saw firsthand how difficult it is to get stuff built here in San Francisco. And for, some people had some valid concerns, no question. And then there's totally irrational concerns, like, why are you going to park 100 homeless people in my neighborhood? And I'm like, there's already homeless people in your neighborhood. There's homeless people in every neighborhood. So you'd rather them on the street really suffering and dying on our streets, right? You don't want to house them, or you want to house them just not in your neighborhood. Right. And I get the concern on your warehousing in Soma and your warehousing in the Tenderloin. We're funding a second Hummingbird mental health facility that's going to be in the Mission District. I've talked to all the advocates in the Tenderloin who have said stop warehousing, and we listen. And so we're doing something in the Mission. I'd be the first one to say let's put a NAV center in every district in the city. We should put housing in every district, formerly homeless housing and supportive housing units in every district in the city. This is not just a Tenderloin or Soma or Mission problem. It's a citywide problem. Yeah,
no, I completely agree. And as I've been going out throughout my neighborhood and having conversations with people about, the city is so split on this issue. But there is
on which issue?
On the issue of
where to house folks.
Right. Like people want to solve. They don't want to solve near them, and some people do want to solve near them. And some people look at the data and see, all of the fears associated with like navigation centers are actually unfounded. Yeah. And so, and the other issue is they say that it'll depress their home values, also unfounded. If you build new affordable housing or supportive housing, right. Unfounded. Yeah. And people. So I think it's an important thing to walk through side by side with people, even if they have opposition.
Absolutely.
And you and the other folks involved in the project are obviously doing that. Who gets a unit?
So So it will go through coordinated entry, which is city run, and it's kind of part of the data project that we help. But you kind of sign up, you're on a waiting list for housing, and in this case, it's for formerly homeless individuals, and so and in this case, adult individuals. So it's not going to be for family units, which was just not part of our initiative. We were focused on chronic homelessness, which is almost entirely single adults. So it goes through the coordinated entry system. It's a simple answer. Tipping Point won't be picking and choosing who goes in there. We will essentially be handing the day-to-day operations off to, I believe we're going to be using Episcopal Community Services to manage the building, and the city will work with them. But there will be on-site services provided for folks. There will be case management, and we already have in touch with community groups to help support the folks that are living there and to hopefully be as productive as neighbors as anyone else living there.
And so, and you mentioned growing up near University High School, which is like, what is that? That's in
Pack Heights.
Pack Heights.
Yeah.
And that's in District 2?
That's D2. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And D2 you believe D2 should have a navigation center?
Absolutely. I remember.
You're going to upset a lot of your neighbors when you sit.
I'll probably, yeah.
You probably know where you stand already.
One of my neighbors is a former presidential candidate who just dropped out after South Carolina. So I imagine he'll be fully supportive. I remember I believe it was with Larkin Street, there was a King Edward II on Lombard Street. It was I don't remember if it was an old hotel or not, but there was talk of putting former foster youth in this building. And I remember calling at that time Supervisor Farrell and being like, we need to have, these kids are going to be great. They're going to do well. And no neighbors wanted former foster youth in their neighborhood. And I was pushing back then to say, and once again, D2, absolutely. I mean, I hear more complaints about what's going on in our city from my neighbors than just about anybody else. And they need to be part of the solution too. So, and I'll yell that from the rooftops. There's land. And by the way, there's land. There's a lot of land in the city. There's people that say there's no land, there's no place to build. That's just, it's not true. I think we need to rezone lots of parts of the city. The idea that we should just have 2-story buildings everywhere throughout the city is not, I don't think, the right policy. The idea that, I honestly think we've become such a progressive city that we've gone so far left that we're now all the way back on the right. We're like, I want my neighborhood for me and for nobody else. I got people telling me we shouldn't take care of anybody that comes from outside San Francisco. We should, like, these people aren't from San Francisco. You know who that sounds like? That sounds like our president saying, keep people out. We shouldn't help. We shouldn't provide any support to, it's a crazy time in San Francisco. And I understand people's frustration. We're paying a lot in taxes and our streets are not safe. You feel like you can't park your car and leave anything in it anymore. Otherwise, your windows can get broken. And by the way, your windows probably can get broken anyway, even if you have a car that has got nothing in it. And so we all need to be part of the solution is kind of my answer.
Yeah. Property crimes, are up. Like violent crime, even
is down, right?
It's down.
Yeah.
That's not reported, and everyone wants something to be done. One of the things I wanted to get into. I don't want to leave this issue alone. We could talk about homelessness for a long time. I think the city is more so in a place where it wants like aggressive action. Yeah. And people are really, I think people's sensibilities about it being near them is probably based on what they see outside. Like feces on the street, people shooting up outside. Yeah. Like
that's mostly what people are responding to.
Mental health.
I agree.
Episodes and so near a lot of our schools, I'm hearing from like our custodial staff and parents, like I have to walk my kids past needles on the way to school.
Yeah.
And so the idea of that just kind of being like open and all over the place near them is like, it's probably like the source of their fear.
Yep. Yep.
And that's I understand that fear. And people, their political correctness kind of goes out the window when their kids are involved or when their house is involved.
Yeah.
And so, but I think we're divided. It's kind of like there are people like you that are moving forward, and I think members of the board of supervisors, they're probably moving forward depending on who introduces it. Mm-hmm. Like if they want it, then I'll do it. If that person wants it, then I won't do it. It's probably that political stuff happening. But so more is getting off the ground. It's not getting off the ground in a quick enough way, and so that's kind of where we are.
So when you say people want how would you approach it as the next supervisor of District 5? How would you take this issue on about kind of the fear of walking down the street or the supposed fear of the perceived unsafety, the safety level on our streets?
So being on the school board, I deal with I talk to parents all the time that have like fears founded and unfounded about their children, and some people opt out of our system because they don't want to deal with like school climate issues or whatever the case may be. And I know that fear is coming from a place like I'm talking about process. They're talking about their baby. We're not talking about like, we're coming from a completely different place. So whenever I'm having those conversations, I have to come in knowing that like, we're coming at this thing a bit differently, and I understand your fear. Right. We have to kind of really dig this. We have to walk through it together. Like we have to say, okay, I have to make myself available to you. I have to hear you. I have to address this, and then we have to get to the root cause of what it actually is. Like, are you afraid for your child's safety? Like your child's going to be okay. Are you afraid for we have to kind of go back and forth about that. And people are going to be on a spectrum. Some people are going to be movable, others aren't. But when we talk about like a district-wide plan, and we pull up every property that should be on the table for a community discussion, right? Every vacant parking lot, every church that has an underutilized parish.
Oh my God. So many of those.
Yeah. And we have a lot of them in District 5.
Yeah.
And so I say, okay, this is everywhere we can do this as a community. Like these are the people that will say yes. It's kind of like with the Brilliant Corners initiative, right? We have, like Alex was explaining, we have what is it, 3,800 units that are currently unoccupied. I'm probably getting the number wrong, but of that number, maybe 20% say yes. Like we had to have everybody get the yeses that we can, and then move forward on our yeses.
Absolutely.
And so the aggressive sentiment may not be satisfied, right? But it will be worked toward, and that's sort of what we have to walk through together. And when we have leadership anywhere in the city that is like anti certain groups, like you have to. You're probably working with people that have $1 billion or close to it in order to get this together. You can't go out saying like I'm anti these people when they could be a part of the solution to help get at. You have to like have a collaborative approach. So we
need that in the public realm, is what you're saying too.
Yeah, we need leaders, city leaders that are willing to work together with other people. And so so when people say aggressive, I would say I agree. And we may not get to it at the rate that you want to, but we're going to have a full-fledged plan to address the problem at the capacity that we need to.
Okay.
Yeah. What would you say to
that? No, listen, it's always about bringing people together. And I think I totally agree right now that it's just so negative out there. I still, you could walk to lots of different parts of the city, and it's beautiful and it's relatively clean, and you got the waterfront, and you got I think the Parks Department's doing a really good job these days. So we got a lot that we should, I hate when we got more that we agree on and we don't agree on. That's a typical politician line.
Yeah.
But that is true, and I think I'll just speak from how I feel about this issue is when we looked into the homeless and the mental health issue, because it's not everyone that is homeless is not everybody that's living in poverty is homeless, right? And so we're addressing issues of poverty. With this homelessness initiative, we realized we were stepping outside of our comfort zone, and that we were also talking about people that were really mentally ill and needed help and support. And putting those folks in jail is not the right answer. We need to get them more mental health beds. My feeling is the city for the last 20 years has not provided enough access to, and we're not big fans of shelter. We think we need to build more permanent supportive housing, but you need shelter beds or you need permanent supportive housing. You need mental health beds. You need a place to go. And then, by the way, it's not okay to be on the street doing whatever it is, the open air drug use. I don't think should ever be okay. But if we have, a safe injection site, which I believe we should get a couple of those up and running. And then no one is allowed to shoot up on our street. No one. I understand the temptation to say, well, they got no place to go. But that's not okay. It should not be okay anymore, because what I think we're doing is we're protecting the rights of 1% of San Franciscans at the expense of the 99% of us that have kids that want to walk down the street and not feel either threatened or have to sidestep feces, whatever it is, all that talk. But until we have enough places for folks to go and for social workers or police officers to direct people to, then we can't say anything. But we've been trying to increase what we call the solution set and the ability for people to have a place to go to get sober, to get well, to see a case manager. And we just haven't invested wisely. And I think we're getting there, and I think we'll get there soon. And at that point, then you can start saying, we're not tolerating any of this behavior anymore. And I think we have to get to that point where I don't think it's okay for people to be shooting up heroin on the street, like right on Market Street, where we're going to ban lots of cars, but we're not going to ban open air heroin. It just doesn't make any sense to anyone, and that's where you lose people. So,
so when you say, all right, so when you say not ban, and there shouldn't be. I've walked through the Tenderloin. I mean, you walk anywhere in the city, and we should. Just out of respect for our children, we should just, as a city, we shouldn't allow it. But
how about respect for the people living in those tents? Like I've walked the Tenderloin. I've ducked into those tents. I've walked underpasses and or the highway with social workers and people that work for the city. It's not safe in there for them. They're not well. They're sick. We're literally people are killing themselves using awful substances. They don't want to be there. So it's forget just for our kids, and it's also in support of the folks living on the street.
No, I hear you.
So sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, I
don't get fired up at all.
No, I was the response, right? Because you say
yes,
whenever you talk zero tolerance, the answer the question becomes like, so what happens when it's violent?
No. So I would be in the future zero tolerance if there was a place for that intravenous drug user to go do drugs safely and hopefully have a case manager there that can talk that person out of it.
It's kind of crazy. We're saying go do drugs safely.
I know it is crazy, but that's where we are. And so to your point,
that's the political line we're trying to walk too. It's trying to like we can't say like, hey, if there's somebody that works for the city that sees you outside doing drugs, they are going to, detain you, take you somewhere so you can do your drugs there. And then you're talking to somebody that's not well, so you're expecting someone not well to go somewhere to do drugs. So that, if anybody struggling with
it's a
addiction,
crazy conversation.
Yeah, so anybody struggling with addiction is not like going to make a plan. I mean, it's not a likely outcome for someone that's not well.
But I think safe injection sites are absolutely something we should be trying. Mm-hmm. And I do think a social worker should be able to move somebody forcibly or not forcibly off the street if they are doing drugs. If we're talking about in front of a school or down the street. I mean, I've walked by my kid's school where my kid's playing next to the fence and there's someone doing drugs on the stoop right outside the fence. Mm-hmm. It's not okay for that guy. And it's definitely not okay for the kids to see it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why we need to have the safe injection site, bring somebody there and not allow it. And I'm not saying put everybody in prison. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying let's create solutions or places for people to go. Just like we need more housing, mm-hmm. we need more beds. We need really specifically the biggest thing I think is the mental health beds. Mm-hmm. Then you have some place for trained social workers to get somebody into an ambulance or somewhere and take that person to a place. Mm-hmm. Because guess what? We're doing that now. Mm-hmm. And we take them to the emergency room where we spend on the top 100 frequent flyers, as they call them, we're spending $100,000 a year per person mm-hmm. to get them in, to forcibly move them. Mm-hmm. Everybody's saying, oh, everybody's got rights. Yeah, they do have rights, but right now they also have rights, and we're spending $100,000 for them to just cycle through the emergency room, mm-hmm. which isn't good for our emergency response system. It's costing you and me as taxpayers so much more money than if we pick that person up with a trained medical provider, move them to a safe injection site where they could get case management, or to a mental health bed where they could sleep for a day or two, mm-hmm. spend 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks. That's less expensive than forcibly moving them into an ambulance and to the general. So this whole talk of zero tolerance, if someone's passed out on the street, mm-hmm. or as we read in the Chronicle the other day, someone overdosed while driving a car in the Tenderloin, we're forcibly taking them to the police have to get that person out of the car, break the window to get them into an ambulance and to give them the injection to revive them. So, yeah, I don't know. It's not. It's not an easy topic, but
it's not.
We do know what works.
Right.
We know permanent supportive housing works. 85% of the time, you get somebody into housing, they stay in housing. The NAV centers are working to a certain extent if you have places for people to exit to. Our housing ladder is broken. Mm-hmm. So we've actually moved 200 people from permanent supportive housing into their own independent living situations, thus freeing up 200 people from the street to go get support inside housing. We need to break this logjam. Mm-hmm. We've done it. We know how to do it. Governor knows how to do it. Mayor knows what needs to happen. Mayor Schaaf in Oakland knows. Liccardo. So if there's one thing I'd love to say, we can do this. Like, there's a lot of people that say, oh, we can't fix this. We can absolutely fix this problem. Mm-hmm. And we can spend the same amount of money that we're spending now. We just have to spend it better.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to go from here and do a bunch of important stuff. So I want to get you out of here.
I'm retired, remember?
All right. What is next? What's next for you?
I got to coach my son's soccer team and baseball team this week. Okay. My wife's working for the governor. Okay. So she's up in Sacramento 3 or 4 days a week. Okay. So I am spending a little more time with my son and my daughter, which is awesome. I'm exploring next steps, but I'm trying to take some time off. It was I started Tipping Point 15 years ago, and I think we've done amazing things. I'm going to be chair of the board for the next 3 years, so still heavily involved and still, daily talking about our chronic homelessness initiative and helping Chris Block, who's our director of that. He and I are on the phone constantly. I'm in the office, at least once a week talking about that. So I'm going to focus on homelessness, being the best board chair I can. And
who's running Tipping Point now?
Sam Cobbs, who is great. He was the executive director of First Place for Youth for over a decade, one of our partner organizations, and he was at Tipping Point for 2 years. Okay. And he was president of Tipping Point all of last year, and so he stepped into the CEO role on January 6th. So he and I are, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure he takes Tipping Point to the next level, which I know he will.
Okay. So I always in the podcast talking about leadership and legacy. Do you have any guiding principles when it comes to leadership?
I was actually going to a lunch tomorrow where they're sending me off. I have no idea what's coming, but I was thinking about this because I think the principles I've always led by are first, at Tipping Point, how I led was like Tipping Point was my family, and I let people run. So I believe in kindness, I believe in generosity, and I believe in finding the best people and letting them run the show. So I think I had some of the best staff in the philanthropic world, nonprofit world that this country has ever seen. I think we've built something incredible, and I think you got to always treat people with respect. I think how you described how you understanding where the parents are coming from and trying to put yourself in their shoes is something that I've always tried to do. And then I always think the work that we did at Tipping Point, there was this temptation to say, oh, we have all this money and we have the power, and to really distribute that power and try to put the power in the hands of the nonprofits that we were serving. So picking great people, being kind, being generous, and service with a sense of humility is kind of how I always hoped Tipping Point would be perceived as. And so, yeah, I think humility at the end of the day in this work is critically important. So I hope that's what I instilled in people.
Okay. And legacy. I didn't get to talk as much about your upbringing as I wanted to. I didn't get to get into your family story and everything, but I named my company after my great-grandfather, Luther Harris. It's called the Luther Harris Holding Company. Okay. He came to San Francisco in 1947 to this neighborhood, bought homes for him and all of his children. He had a 6th grade education. His legacy is important to me. This is his dictionary. These are my great-grandmother's chairs.
They're comfortable. I've been held up for the last hour.
Yeah. That's not the response for everybody that comes up. I'm glad you enjoy them. How do you think about legacy, and how do you think about your legacy?
Oh man, my legacy. Come on, I'm young. I guess I can't see the menu at restaurants anymore, so maybe I'm getting older. How do I think about my legacy? Service. I mean, I want it to be about service, and that's what drove me at Tipping Point. Like I have, incredible fortune to grow up with. I always say not just 2 parents, but 4 parents. My parents got divorced when I was 2. Had a great stepfather who passed away more than 15 years ago. My mom, my dad, my stepmother kind of always instilling in me that I had it very good and that we had to be part of the solution. My dad's a rabbi. Always being part of the solution and understanding your obligation to the community. And I hope what we've done at Tipping Point and alongside my board and the leadership council and our staff is that no matter how tough you have it, someone else is probably struggling more, and so whatever you got, you should give it, and so I hope Tipping Point is I hopefully be hard pressed to do something that serves more people in this life. Like I think we've done an incredible amount. I think we have more to do, but it's about service and community, and if we aren't, I remember a friend of mine, Tazo, spoke at one of our early benefits, and he said, if you look to the left and you look to your right, and those two aren't doing that well, then you're not going to be doing that well. If that person your left and your right are doing as well as you're doing, then you got something.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we have far too many people, not only in San Francisco, but in this region and in this country, that are not doing well. And so the better they do, the better we all do. And so that's the legacy, I hope, of Tipping Point.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was fun.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you also. Peace, and thank you for listening to another episode of Cook on Monday Morning. I'd like to thank Daniel, Lurie, for coming on today's podcast. What he's accomplished with Tipping Point, I think, is an incredible testament to what philanthropy can do if it's aligned directly with trying to solve actual city issues in real time. He's learned a ton of lessons that I've really enjoyed, like picking his brain about various different topics. He and the people that he's brought to the table are all important stakeholders in improving outcomes in our city. And I think it shows, even if you are well resourced or if you're not, like, we're going to get to a better place if everyone can get on the same page about trying to do something serious when it comes to issues of homelessness or whatever the case may be. So I'd like to thank him. I'd like to thank everyone that's made this podcast possible. I'd like to thank our videographer and producer, David Topete. Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank Fernando Cinco Marquez for the editing he does of the newsletter. I'd like to thank Icy House for providing the mics for the podcast. And I'd like to thank all of you that have been sharing, liking, subscribing to the podcast. We are growing our community. We are telling interesting stories. People are learning, and that's really what they're supposed to be about, because at Cook on Monday Morning, we believe that if you own Monday morning, you can own the week. If you own the week, you can own the year. And if you change your year, you can change your life. I do have a special ask for anyone out there that may know. I'm looking for the founder of Red Bay Coffee. Red Bay Coffee is a coffee company based out in Oakland. They have a black founder. I'd love to have him on a podcast. This is Red Bay Coffee in my cup. I think it's amazing coffee. So if you all know that person, put me in touch. I'd like to just end this, as we always do, by thanking everyone that makes San Francisco the incredible city that it is. I'd like to thank our teachers, our school lunch workers, our janitors, our first responders, the people that drive our buses, the people that keep our streets clean, the people that are on the front lines helping people who are struggling most. Thank you. This city is incredible because of you. We are who we are because of you, and I really appreciate you. So I'd like to thank all of you for making the city great, and I'd like to also just say anyone in other cities such as Oakland, LA, Houston, Dallas, New Orleans, the state of Tennessee, Mississippi, Nashville, throughout Florida and Michigan, especially Detroit, Philadelphia. Let me know what you're doing to improve your Monday morning. Let me know about the people that are making a difference in your community. Let's continue to build together. Let's continue to learn from each other. And have a great Monday. Peace, and we out.